Our ultimate goal is to provide speed and accuracy. And when you do that in any business, you can create greater liquidity in the marketplace, right? Because it creates more transparency and that sort of stuff. So ultimate goal is to create more liquidity in the commercial real estate market, which is, as we all know, very illiquid.
You found the Real Estate Law Podcast. Because real estate is more than just pretty pictures, and law goes well beyond the paperwork and courtroom arguments. If you're a real estate professional or looking to build real estate expertise, then welcome to the conversation and discover more at realestatelawpodcast.com.
Welcome to another episode of the Real Estate Law Podcast, along with attorney, real estate broker Rory Gill. My name is Jason Muth, and we're thrilled you're here for a spirited conversation. Today, we're going to be talking a lot about 1031 exchanges and commercial real estate and technology. And Rory, what do you know about 1031 exchanges?
Pretty well versed on the basics of 1031 exchanges, what they are, what the timelines are, how it works, who you have to hire. But what's going to be great about today's conversation is it's a different aspect of 1031 exchanges that I'm not particularly familiar with, and that is in commercial real estate, how you market this. So I don't want to put too many words on our guest today, but I know they specialize on kind of the aspect of 1031 exchanges, which is once you're in a 1031 exchange, you become a very highly motivated buyer. And in that, there are some opportunities for other parties to connect with you, and you are very determined to get a deal done just based on the rules. So without making up anything else or misspeaking, Jason, could you bring our guest on and introduce him?
Absolutely. Yeah. We are speaking today with Adam Sharif. He's the founder and chief strategist with nxtCRE. Did I get that right?
Yes,
Adam?
you did.
nxtCRE. Adam comes to us from sunny Miami. We're recording this today in our never-ending winter here in New England, where there's yet another nor'easter that is hitting us today. And not to make this seem too dated, because maybe you're listening to this, listener, sometime in the summertime or sometime next year. But those are the perils of living in the Northeast, and we don't have the beautiful weather that you have in Miami. So, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about, what is your role as the chief strategist and founder of nxtCRE? And you got to get into this technology platform that you guys have developed.
Well, the concept itself that we've launched and are successfully implementing came to me back when I was in GMAC. My background is in commercial real estate finance. I was a member of the senior management committee at GMAC Commercial Mortgage. I was the managing director of the equities transactions group. But before that, I started my career in commercial real estate as an investment broker. Basically, what we're doing at GMAC and the 1031 exchange that we'll be discussing is really the byproduct of what we really do with commercial real estate lenders. Commercial real estate lenders across the nation are partnering with nxtCRE to gain line of sight into their own borrowers, their own customers' next move once they've paid off their loan due to a sale. 20% of a lender's portfolio will run off every year. 75% of that 20% will be paid off due to a sale of a property. Now, on the refinancing part, which is the other 5%, that's easy for lenders. They know who those borrowers are. They've been chasing them for some time, 2 years ahead of them at loan maturity, to help them refinance. But once a borrower decides to sell their property, then the lender loses line of sight to what that borrower will be doing next. There's no digital way for them to know what they're doing. And that's really the problem we solve for commercial real estate lenders, who are our primary partners. And signing up commercial real estate lenders is our number one objective as well. So what happens is 2/3 of all those who are paying off their loan by a sale will be reinvesting the proceeds to buy another property, right? And if you're doing that, you're going to leverage 1031 exchange tax codes to sort of defer the taxes on those gains, right? You're not going to sell your property, pay your taxes, and then invest what's left in it, right? So what you want to do is to invest the whole amount. And in some states, like California or Illinois, New York, those taxes can be 50% of your total proceeds from a sale. So if you're getting $10 million and at closing, 5 would go to state and federal taxing authorities, and you get to keep the other 5, unless you do a 1031 exchange where you can now leverage the entire $10 million. So that's where basically the concept came from, is to help commercial real estate lenders gain line of sight into what their own borrowers' reinvestment, equity reinvestment, and debt funding needs. Now, what happens is, as soon as one of their borrowers responds to our lending partner's inquiry into what they'll be doing next, that information is posted up on our platform. We're not a listing site, so you don't get to go on and see a multiple list of we call them must-buy investors, because for the reasons you mentioned before, they're highly motivated to invest. And in fact, if they want to take advantage of the 1031 exchanges, they must reinvest. Right? So that's what we call them, must-buy investors. And once that information is on our platform, the lender gets a dashboard and sees their reinvestment requirement, equity reinvestment requirements, and anyone who has a property to sell and they want to sell to a 1031 exchange buyer, which is every property seller, because universally they're considered the holy grail of investors, right? There's no one that comes close to what they can provide in terms of probability of close at a higher price. And they have the cash on hand. They don't have a lot of time, so if you're a seller, you're dealing with someone that's not going to string you along or kick the tire and that sort of stuff. They have to make a decision and do it rapidly, which is much better for a property seller. And they're using equity that otherwise would be paid towards taxes. So deliverability of a transaction is much more important to them than making sure that they have the deal of the century. And instead of negotiating on 1/100th of a percent on cap rate, they care more about knowing that the seller is motivated to deliver the property on time, because time is very short for them. Once a property seller upload their property information on our platform, they'll get matched, very much like a dating site, with multiple must-buy investors are interested in that type of property at that location with that price range, right? And then conversation ensues between the two of them on our platform, and the lender gets to see all this activity on their dashboard. So now, not only are they seeing what their own customers are looking to buy, but they get to see their debt, their funding requirement on the debt side, right? So then they can jump in any time and provide funding. The way we make money is we charge the selling side 0.75%. 2/3 of that, 50 basis points, goes to the lender for allowing us to by being a partner. So not only is the commercial real estate lender receiving 50 basis points on every transaction that closes with their borrowers, deals that they otherwise wouldn't even know about, they also now get to provide the debt funding for that acquisition. So that's basically how it works. The concept came to me when I was back in GMAC. If you want to hear a background about that, I'd be more happy to share that with you. But what makes what we're doing today doable is the digital capabilities that exist today that did not exist back when I was running the equity transaction group for GMAC Commercial Mortgage.
Yeah.
So, I hear you with your partnerships with your lenders. This is a really kind of innovative, advanced retention play to make sure that their large commercial debtors stay with them, or at the very least, that they have a chance to retain their business with the next property in the chain. One thing I understand a little bit better is how the data first comes available to you. As you suggested, the lenders kind of lose line of sight with their borrowers once they've made the decision to sell, and they're not really intimately involved in that decision making. When does the identity of the borrower come in to play? Is it when they register with you? Is it when you analyze the data? When does that profile come into your system?
That's a great question. And what we call an early warning signal is what starts the whole process. If you have a property, you have a loan on it, your loan doc says you got to let the lender know 30 days ahead of when you are planning on paying off that loan. We call that early warning signal. So the loan docs, so if you're refinancing or selling, whatever you have to do, you have to send a notice to your lender, goes to the servicing desk, asking them to give you a payoff letter, and again, 30 days ahead. In some cases, the closing date is moved a week or two, so you sometimes get this information 45, 60 days ahead of the actual projected date. So as soon as that happens, the lender receives that notice and logs it onto their system, because they have to timestamp it and all that sort of stuff. As soon as that happens, then our system automatically sends to that borrower an email with a link to a questionnaire that's branded with a lender's logo. The message is from the lender, it's not from us. And the lender is trying to find out what their borrower will be doing next. Why are you paying off your loan? Is it a refi or a sale? If it's a refi, we don't ask any more questions. It's done. Thank you so much. Congratulations, that sort of stuff. But if they're selling, well, then the questionnaire continues and says, will you be reinvesting the proceeds from the cash? If the answer is yes, if the answer is no, thank you so much. But if the answer is yes, then the message goes on and says, look, we want to help you with your new acquisition. We've partnered with nxtCRE. We're in a position to increase the number of opportunities that you'll get to see, opportunities that you otherwise wouldn't see. If you're a borrower and you get an email like that from your lender and knowing they're big, they have a big servicing portfolio and they have multiple other borrowers, and you might assume that some of those borrowers may have properties that's not on the market, so off-market deal, if you will, or maybe the lender has opportunities that are in distress situation. So yeah, you want to see those. So you're going to respond to your lender's question as to what, seeking as to what you want to buy, because by the way, you're not a borrower. Your information is totally anonymous. The only information that is shown to the people who are matched is what is the amount of equity you have and what is your selection deadline and how many days you have till your selection deadline, amount of equity. Those two things sort of lines you up as to whether you're a good potential must-buy investor. If you have 5 days left on your, to identify a property, chances are as a property seller, that's not going to work for you because he doesn't have enough time to control, to do his due diligence, contract, control, all the things you need to do before your selection deadline to select that property. So you may not want to send your property to that must-buy investor, or someone that's got $2 million in equity but wants to do a $20 million deal. Well, they're going to have to raise additional money, and you might want to still send it to them or not. But you can determine as a property seller who gets to see your property, and if once you send it to them, then then the must-buy investor decides if they want to pursue your opportunity. So it's really, it's kind of simple, but it's not as simple as it looks.
Yeah. I think it's fascinating that you took this one little data point, which probably isn't so little, which is that, you need a payoff statement or something has been triggered. And that obviously gets people to say, something's going on with this borrower, what's going on with this person. And then your system helps push them along and probably back into that lender's space in the first place, where they might have been purchasing another property and the lender might be completely pieced out of that. Because I think on the residential space, there's so much shopping for mortgages when you're buying another property, and that you just need a payoff statement with your current loan. You don't even think twice of, the servicing company or the bank that you used to work with, unless you have a really deep relationship with this company. But I think that on the residential side, a lot of people are probably just shopping rates and shopping whatever local banks or relationships they have. But, this retention play that you have, where you're saying to these commercial lenders, hey, listen, you're making a lot of interest from this customer right here. Don't lose them. Figure out a way to retain this person. And we have this platform that will identify folks that are about to do a 1031 exchange, and let's help them, keep the funding or keep a loan for a future loan with your institution. I just think that's an incredible little tiny data point that you found that you were able to, use to work with these commercial lenders and saying, I have a way for you to kind of retain a lot of your business.
I've heard someplace that it's much cheaper to keep an existing customer than to acquire a new one, right? So that's what this is about. So instead of normally, you mentioned residential, this is probably how it happens in commercial as well. It is the borrower that has to call the lender and say, hey, what do you got? Here's what I'm doing. We've changed that model a little bit. Now the lender has a line of sight as to what's happening. The lender can be proactive and reach out to that borrower and tell them, hey, I know, based on the fact that you're an nxtCRE and you're signed up and you've been matched, you're looking at this 20-unit apartment complex in Sioux City, Iowa, whatever it might be. And, you have the rent roll, you have the operating 12-month trailing, operating information, you have all that sort of stuff. And based on that, you've decided what you want to pay. And based on our underwriting, this is the loan quote we can give you. That quote comes directly from the lender, so there aren't any outside brokers involved in that case. So for the borrower, that's a much more attractive quote than one that would come in through a third party, if you will. So the lender is in a prime position to keep their own borrower based on the information they have, as opposed to waiting to hear from someone else that their own customers are engaging in some sort of an activity that they can use your services. So that to us, I think is an enormously valuable way to go about doing the next deal. nxtCRE, right? The NXT stands for two things, actually. It stands for your next deal, also stands for the next phase of the way commercial real estate transaction market will be evolving. Our ultimate goal is to provide speed and accuracy. And when you do that in any business, you can create greater liquidity in the marketplace, right? Because it creates more transparency and that sort of stuff. So ultimate goal is to create more liquidity in commercial real estate market, which is, as we all know, very illiquid.
What proportion of the property owners take up the lender's offer to start a conversation about working with them? What's the adoption rate there?
It's been 100% so far. The ones that are doing it. And of course, it doesn't cost them anything, right? As I said before, if you're a buyer, if you're a must-buy investor, you want to see everything in the marketplace. So to let your lender know what you're looking for is really to your benefit, right? It doesn't cost you anything. In fact, it's much better than trying to go on various listing sites and trying to find properties and do the filtering and only find out that some of these listings have been dated and the deals are no longer available, but the broker says, hey, but I've got another deal. So they basically have these listings on these listing sites more as a hook, if you will, to get potential buyers to call them and that sort of stuff. And then you wind up getting calls from everyone and you get inundated with unqualified opportunities and that sort of stuff. And that takes a lot of your time as a buyer and trying to figure out exactly what you want. So for them, it's not a problem, right? So for them, it's not a problem to complete the questionnaire. It does matter what the borrower sees. If that questionnaire came directly from us, someone they didn't know anything about, nxtCRE, chances are they wouldn't be that forthcoming because, how are you helping me? You're asking me this information, you're just another broker that's going to be, sending me all kinds of stuff. But since it's coming from their lender, someone that they've had relationships with now, by the time you're selling it, you probably have owned the property 7, 8, 9, 10 years. And during that time, every month you've been sending in addition to your interest payment, rent rolls, operating information, your balance sheet, all this other sort of stuff that your loan doc says you have to do. If you don't do it, you wind up, paying late filing fees and stuff like that to your lender. So you have a relationship with your lender, you know who they are. And when that lender says, look, I want to help you find your next deal, it's hard for must-buy investors. No, I hate you. I don't want you to help me, find opportunities. Otherwise I wouldn't have or anything like that. That's not going to happen. And very rarely you hate people that are giving you money anyway. So there's a great deal of credibility when that borrower receives that email with a link to the questionnaire that's branded with a lender's logo and a message from the lender. It's very hard for a borrower to disregard that and dismiss it.
I was going to ask how much you think a commercial property seller is going to be doing a 1031 exchange. Like, is it 100% of the people that are selling that are now looking to roll that over? Or like what percentage of that marketplace?
It's about 2/3. A majority of them will be reinvesting the proceeds from the sale. Look, if a pension fund selling a property, they don't pay taxes, so they don't have to do a 1031 exchange, right? They don't do that. And then there's other institutional type investors that aren't going to do 1031 exchange. If you're a closed-end fund, for instance, where everything's got to be liquidated, you're not going to do the 1031 exchange there. Although there are ways to go around that. You need everyone's cooperation in a way, but it's generally that doesn't happen. But most everyone else does. Look, I came up with this concept when I was at GMAC, as I mentioned before. We were primarily a debt platform. We were the 800-pound gorilla. Nobody came close to us back then. We had a servicing portfolio in excess of $300 billion. And, being on the senior management committee, on the senior management team, we get all kinds of data as to who's refinancing and that sort of stuff. And as I'm looking through the data, I'm looking at most of these loans are being paid off due to sales. So my question is, hey, what's going on here? They're selling? There's a capital event going on. What can we do to provide some value? And the answer was, they're not refinancing. We don't care. We just, chase those. And I'm on the equity transactions group. There's a capital event. There's a shitload of equity that's being, sorry for my language. Let's find out more about this. Okay. And so we start contacting those borrowers and ask them, what they were doing, and about 2/3 said, yeah, we were going to reinvest the proceeds to buy another property. 1031 exchange buyers mirror the U.S. Real estate generally, right? In terms of what they buy and their profile. I mean, they could be selling a car wash, they could be selling an office building, it could be an apartment complex, and they could be buying all those things as well. So we asked them what they would want if they were interested, and of course, for the reason I mentioned before, we've got a $300 million loan servicing portfolio, tens of thousands of borrowers. There's got to be opportunities there that we otherwise wouldn't see. Of course, please send us whatever you have, right? And then we went to our property sellers, other borrowers who were thinking of selling their properties, and I said, well, would you be interested in selling your property? We've got these number of 1031 exchange investors, which we now call must-buy investors. Of course, the answer was universal. They've got cash on hand. Well, it's not even on hand. It's an escrow. They can't touch it, right? They can't take it, go to Vegas and lose it or anything like that. It's got to stay in escrow. They have very short time to make a decision, and they're using money that, again, we said before, that would otherwise go to pay taxes. So they're looking for deliverability above all else. And they're excited. Yeah, we'd love to sell to them. And it was like shooting fish in a barrel. The problem was the communication tools available to us back then were mostly phone, fax, and FedEx, right? I mean, that's basically what it was. Emails were just getting started. You couldn't do attachment. I wasn't very comfortable using emails just then either. So it became like the TV show I Love Lucy. I don't know if you remember the chocolate scene and the conveyor belt. It was started going so fast. We just couldn't keep up with the volume, and to the point where we weren't serving our clients very well. We would, I would have to hire, I think, 80 to 90 new people to handle all that volume, and I had no interest in doing anything like that. When you do something like that for a big company, the big company is the owner of it, and you'll get promoted somewhere else, and someone else gets to run it and have fun with it. And I wasn't going to. I'm like, this is not going to work for me. So I went on and started my own real estate investment development firm, developed in Illinois, Texas, South Florida. In fact, the first deal we bought in South Florida was a George Soros REIT, which is complicated as hell to buy a REIT. Included a 17-unit apartment complex right on the beach, on the water. It was a fantastic deal for everyone. And we developed housing and townhouse developments in Palm Beach Gardens and that sort of stuff. And about 3 years ago, I started thinking about what we were doing at GMAC, and I was thinking about technology. I was actually primarily thinking about technology and how that is changing or has the potential to sort of change a lot of the things we do. And real estate has always been behind in that sort of stuff. And I thought about the problem we had when I was at GMAC and getting more of these must-buy investor deals done. Knew that with technology being able to deliver data as fast as it can today, we could leverage technology and take advantage of that. Not unfortunately, but I no longer worked on GMAX, so I didn't have the captive $300 million worth of servicing to go after and all that. So we had to go out there and find lenders who would partner with us. And like anything else, when you start building these things, you have to identify every component that goes into building it, and have the team to put it together and that sort of stuff. So that takes a long time to do, believe it or not. People have to believe in your vision. They have to believe in your ability to execute. And that's not the easiest thing to do. And especially at the beginning where no one is getting paid. It's just an idea. If we do well, we all do well. If we don't, they have to have confidence in my ability to execute in order to partner with me early on.
I have a couple more profound questions, but there's one just like little thing that's eating at me. And that's, if in the exchanger's position, once you're branded as a must-buy investor, does that undercut their negotiating position at all when they go to acquire the next property, if it's kind of known that there's such a motivated buyer?
Let me ask you a question. Does it matter if you call them a 1031 exchange buyer or must-buy investor? Once the seller knows that, they know that. In fact, they have to put that in a contract, or we're doing a 1031 exchange, right? So sellers, everyone knows that. And the answer to the question is no. Because if you're a motivated seller, right, what you want to do is your main focus is to find someone who has a higher probability of closing the deal, right? Because, maybe you have a loan that's coming due. You can't extend it. You want someone that will close on the deal. And you know that if you're the kind of a seller that wants to squeeze your buyer on every deal, you're going to miss out on a lot of really good investors, right? Because they're not just getting your deal as a seller. They're getting a lot of other deals from other sellers. You can say, well, I'm going to squeeze you. Well, Mr. Seller, you're not the only one, who has his property in front of these must-buy investors. So, we're delivering higher probability of closing in the shortest period of time. So if that value isn't enough for you, and you got to also try to squeeze every last nickel out of your buyer, just understand that you're also competing with other sellers that may not be as unreasonable or as irrational as you are as a property seller, right? Because we can want whatever we want. We can do whatever we want. But the reality is we live in a competitive world, and you're not the only game in town, if you will. That's the problem we're solving for our must-buy investors, because right now, must-buy investors do have that problem, right? Because, many times they wind up acquiring mismatched assets, something that doesn't work for them just because of the timing. Sometimes they have to overpay, and many times the exchange fails just because they can't find the right property on time. So technology also solves that problem for the must-buy investor. And what we tell must-buy investors is, look, you're a must-buy investor today. If you're on our platform, chances are you'll be a done deal investor tomorrow. And that's what you want more than anything else. And that's what the sellers want. Sellers want people that are working with that want to get the deal done.
A good number of our listeners are involved in real estate, either as agents or as small scale residential investors. So I want to kind of extrapolate the lessons you've had building up this enterprise to some key takeaways for them. And I can tee you up with one that's glaring, and that is the value of having a retention marketing strategy. So, for a real estate agent, if they're well organized with their client list, they can predict when a client's lease is going to expire, or when their youngest child is going to graduate from high school, or even be on the lookout for dynamic points such as a divorce filing or a job promotion, things that might trigger them to being more likely to buy or sell. You've done a lot. You've built this enterprise. You've worked kind of a unique angle in the industry. Are there any kind of more universal lessons that you could share with our, agent and small scale investors?
Absolutely. Here's what I want to say to the agents, because we're very broker friendly. Platform is not exclusively available to brokers. We would if every broker would agree to exclusively put up all their properties on our platform. We'd be more happy to give them an exclusive, do only deals with brokers, which obviously neither one of those things is going to happen. Yeah. Technology can do a better job of price point discovery, right? I think that's what technology does better than anyone else. Technology can never provide representation, and every property seller needs representation. And that's really what if a broker is thinking that their main value to their seller is to be the procuring cause of an investor, then I think they're missing what the seller's needs really are. The seller really needs representation. Seller needs someone, once the buyer is identified, to sort of walk them through the market, show them what's going on, what's been happening, why rent should be what the seller's suggesting they should be, and that sort of stuff, walkthroughs and all that sort of stuff. Technology can't do that. You have to have a person that knows the market to that. Additionally, if you are, especially if you're young or early, just getting started in the business, don't have a big book of business, you can stay more competitive. You can get more listing, which is the hardest part in a commercial real estate transaction, right? Selling, eventually you're going to sell the asset, but getting the listing is the toughest part of closing any transaction, because without it, you have nothing, right? You need the product, you need the listing. And one way you can use our platform to be competitive in getting a listing against someone else who's also pitching to get that listing is say, look, I'm going to put your property on nxtCRE because that's where they have the greatest number of buyers that have the highest potential probability of closing. If your competitors in doing that, that should be a slam dunk sales pitch to your seller in terms of getting them to give you the listing, as opposed to someone who wouldn't want to do something like that because they don't care about the seller's best interest. Brokers, and I started my career as a broker, they aren't always incentivized to represent. Sometimes the way they're compensated disincentivizes them from creating the kind of transparency and efficiency that they're actually are in the business to provide, because the way they're compensated. We're saying that you guys have to stop thinking like that. You got to start thinking about your own customers and your own clients, and the faster you, and then once you do that and you start closing more deals faster, you'll start getting more deals, more listings as a result of it. That's what we tell our brokers. We're partnering with nxtCRE. I don't know if you guys are familiar with nxtCRE. I'm sure you are. I think tomorrow is when we're going to hear the final results, where they'll have 13,000 members who are brokers. Their listings will be on our platform, and they'll be matched with must-buy investors and that sort of stuff. And nxtCRE will go through this big training with all their members, and marketing and all that. We'll do some dual marketing with them, trying to reach all their brokers and trying to get their brokers to upload their property information onto our platform, cutting back the marketing time and cost of selling that asset, and becoming a hero to their seller, and then getting the next listing.
Yeah, this is all a really fascinating element of the commercial real estate transactions in the 1031 exchange process that probably a lot of us didn't even know was happening. I mean, it's a tool out there that you're solving a need for people that are looking for those 1031 exchange properties, and for financial institutions to retain their customers. And, the way that you kind of triangulated to realize this was a need, based on all of your experience was super fascinating. So, we really appreciate your going into all of that detail about this entire space that probably a lot of people that were listening didn't even know was there. Why don't we get to our final couple of questions, and then you could let everybody know where they could reach out to you and learn more about nxtCRE and the products that you're offering. So we ask these questions of all of our guests that come on the podcast. They're really simple, and they're a great way just to kind of wrap things up and learn a little bit more about you. So, Adam, our first one that we have for you is, if you can get on stage for half an hour and talk about any subject in the world with zero preparation, doesn't have to be real estate, what would that be?
Oh my God. I don't know. I'm a sports fan. Maybe you speak about that. I follow leaders, other leaders in the industry. I always try to find out what their take is on things. I'm interested in what Jamie Dimon has to say, and I'm interested in, the Oracle of Omaha has to say. But more importantly, I'm interested in learning from as many different people as I can. And if I were to speak on a stage for 30 minutes, I would probably give you, example of what someone said. Like, for instance, Barry Diller said, I'd much rather have a C concept and an A level execution than to have a concept and a C or D level execution, right? That's a very interesting topic to be discussing, because no matter how great your ideas are, without the proper execution or A-level exexecution, which includes building an A-level team, isn't going to happen. So, those are the sort of things I would probably at least speak to what Steve Jobs said in the past or something. In fact, I just read an article about Steve Jobs the other day that just blew my mind. I mean, he was at first against the Apple phone. He didn't think it should be launched. He didn't think it was going to work. But what happened was really, what I thought was fascinating is that his people pushed him to get it going, and it wasn't overnight. The lesson from that is, if you're joining a team looking for the oracle to lead you all the way, you probably are not going to be as big an asset to the team as one who wants to be the next oracle on your team. So, you want people that take initiative. You want people that can that not be afraid to speak up about a concept or idea or how to improve things. You want people that are true believers, and if you can find them on your team, you found gold. So those are the sort of stuff I'd probably be.
Even the best oracles out there, they are not self-made. They surround themselves with a great network of people that they trust, and they learn from those folks, and they bounce ideas off them. So that's a great subject to speak on. Second one of these final questions we have for you. Tell us something that happened early in your life or career that impacts the way that you're working today.
I've always had the belief that there's really not much that I can put my mind to that I can overcome. That doesn't mean I was right, but that's the kind of personality I have. I also believe in when Daniel Burnham said, "Make no small plans; they do not inspire the hearts of men." So, those are the sort of things that probably shape my life and the things I go after.
All right. And finally, tell us something you're listening to or watching or reading these days. Could be anything in the world.
Everything and anything. I have a news feed. I mean, you'd be surprised where you get some ideas, right? I mean, information is everywhere. So, and most of it just useless, and you've got to figure out how to, filter it quickly. But I read everything. I mean, I read stuff from the very left to the very right, in between. I read about sports. I read about business. Everything that I get my hands on, I will read and try to see how I can use it to help myself and my team and our investors.
True devourer of information. Rory, any final questions that you have, or anything that before you wrap up?
No, I just want to make sure that our listeners understand where they could learn more about your services, your product, and your company, and about you.
Well, nxtCRE.com is our website. You can go on. And if they want information, info@nxtCRE.com is a great place to start. But if you need to reach me personally, Adam@nxtCRE.com.
Adam, excellent.
I just want to be clear that everybody, that is nxtCRE.com.
Well, we'll put that in the show notes. So just scroll down further. If you're listening to this, go check out the YouTube version or the show notes, and there will be links over to your website. Hey, Rory, where can people get a hold of you?
People could find me either through my real estate brokerage, that's Next Home Titletown, nxtHomeTitletown.com, or through my law practice, that's Urban Village Legal, urbanvillagelegal.com.
And if you have enjoyed this episode, we'd love it if you could give us a great review on iTunes or wherever you're listening to this, Spotify or even YouTube. If you have comments, feel free to comment below or shoot us a quick email. You can email me. That's jason@nxtHomeTitletown.com. We read all of our comments. If you want to be a guest on this podcast, please reach out to us, and we'll see if we have any slots to get you scheduled. All right. Well, Adam, thank you so much. Adam Sharif with nxtCRE. It's been a pleasure talking to you. All the best for a great year this year. This platform looks like it is really going to help lots of folks on both sides of the transaction. We wish you the best with that.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Rory. Appreciate your time. Thanks again for inviting me.
Thank you.
This has been the Real Estate Law Podcast. Because real estate is more than just pretty pictures, and law goes well beyond the paperwork and courtroom arguments. We're powered by Next Home Titletown, Greater Boston's progressive real estate brokerage. More at nxtHomeTitletown.com. And Urban Village Legal, Massachusetts Real Estate Council, serving savvy property owners, lenders, and investors. More at urbanvillagelegal.com. Today's conversation was not legal advice, but we hope you found it entertaining and informative. Discover more at realestatelawpodcast.com. Thank you for listening.